Welcome to my first video of Astrological Zen-Ergy, where I'm going to be talking about some of the planetary energies that can be impacting your life in some ways that can help you keep your Zen while riding the waves of that energy. I'm also going to be starting having monthly card readings for each individual zodiac sign starting for May, and I'm also planning on including a high-level picture of the Astrological Zen-Ergy for the entire month, sort of a forecast, so you can be in the know as we approach the month. And my intention is to have those monthlies posted around the 15th of the month prior to that month, so that you can have a heads up of a couple of weeks in advance of those energies. So let's talk. Mercury just went into retrograde on April 1st, no foolin, and Saturn entered its pre-shadow for their retrograde on March 24th. In the future, I'll be giving you more advanced notice on these, but it's not too late to get some information and tools around these energies to help them be more manageable and less impactful. So let's start by talking a little bit about what a retrograde is. So what's a retrograde? A retrograde is when, from the Earth's point of view, a planet slows down. It starts moving backwards because we are either passing it up, that's in the case of the outward planets whose orbits are longer than ours, or a retrograde happens because the planet is passing us up because it's an inner planet like Mercury and Venus, which are in between us and the sun. And when a planet retrogrades, it's like they are journeying through the underworld, gathering insights, perspectives, and information from the unseen world. This can also be the energy of the planet when it's below the horizon on your birth chart. So if you check out your birth chart and anything that's below on the lower circle of the birth chart, that can also have that same type of energy. And it is a time when you reflect back on your life to see how that planetary energy for that planet impacted you, reviewing decisions, the impacts, and results of your choices. And then we move into its post-shadow. We begin to see what changes we're going to put into force as the planet moves towards being direct and moving forward again. So let's take a look into what this pre- and post-shadow is. When you look at the degree and the sign of the planet at the start of its retrograde and at the end, this tells you when the shadow periods begin before and after the retrograde. So you can find this information through an ephemeris, which are books that record all the past, present, and future degrees of all the planets as they go throughout, day by day. And you can sometimes find access to those for free online. The pre-shadow period is when the planet begins to slow before it goes in reverse fully at the beginning of the retrograde. So to determine the start date of the pre-shadow, look at the degree and sign of the planet at the end of the retrograde, because that tells you when it is back to where it was before it started to slow. During the pre-shadow, we begin to feel the impact of the retrograde as it grows stronger and stronger and more impactful the closer we get to the beginning of the actual retrograde period. The post-shadow, though, the post-shadow period is when the planet begins to speed up after it has gone direct. And it is a period of reflection on what you learned during the retrograde and where planning takes place on how you're going to apply what you have learned to your life. And the further you move away from the date the planet went direct, the less intense it is. And you determine the date that the post-shadow ends by looking at the degree and sign of when the retrograde for the planet started, so the very beginning of the retrograde. Retrogrades, they can get a bad rap, oh my God, Mercury retrograde, run for your life. But when you realize how often they happen, you can see that they are part of a large portion of our lives. You You can see here Mercury goes 3 to 4 times a year, and it's usually 3 to 3.5 weeks, the actual retrograde itself, not with the pre and post shadow. Venus is approximately every, year and a half. Mars is approximately every 2 years. Jupiter is almost every year. Saturn's almost every year. Uranus, Neptune, Pluto, every year. So it's not like a once in a blue moon type of thing. We experience this all the time. Retrogrades serve a purpose, and there are things that you can do to make the most of them. And we'll look at those for each retrograde as I put out videos regarding them. But in general, for all retrogrades, when we're in lower vibrational emotion and energy, additional lower vibrational energy can impact us more. But like a pendulum that goes back and forth, if we're on the lower end of the pendulum, the change and the impact in energies are more extreme as we sing from one side all the way to the other side. But when we're in a higher vibrational energy, we're more at the top of the pendulum and the impact is very little. If a planet is in retrograde at the time of your birth, which is commonly noted somewhere on your birth chart with either an R or an RX, then retrogrades for that planet will impact you differently than those who were born when they were direct. I also recommend checking to see if the planet was in pre-shadow at the time of your birth as well, because you will still have been influenced by the energies of the retrograde, just not as intensely as with the actual retrograde period itself. A large difference in how they impact you is that retrogrades won't be as intense. It's like a baby being born in an extreme climate. It's like they're born a bit immune to the intensity of the energy. If you were born in the pre-shadow, it would be the same, just not as super immune as those born in the actual retrograde period. And if you were born during the post-shadow of the retrograde of the planet, you're gifted with a heightened ability to understand the challenges in the areas of your life that the planet rules over, and with the tint of the zodiac sign that it was in at the time. And you can look at it like the planets tell you what in your life is impacted by the characteristics it rules over. It's like the moon represents emotions, nurturing, and safety. So whatever planet that we're looking at with the retrograde will tell you that. And then the zodiac sign is the how. So like the moon in Virgo experiences emotions through structures, systems, and dependability. And then the house is where in your life it impacts you. So Moon in Virgo in the 7th house will express its attributes through partnerships, collaborations, and contracts. So hopefully that helps, like how you can use those 3 different pieces of information to understand more about the impact on you. All of the astrological energy impacts us as a collective, but it also impacts us all differently depending on what planetary energies exist in our birth chart. You know, we are all each a unique soup with flavors that are activated when certain planets are in certain houses in certain signs. It can be exciting to look into how a planet may impact our own lives. So that's the information on retrogrades itself. Let's take a look at the specific retrogrades for Mercury and Saturn. Mercury went into its pre-shadow on March 19th of this year, and then it, like I said, it entered into its actual retrograde on April 1st in Aries. It'll go direct on April 24th, which when it'll enter its post-shadow, and will be out of the post-shadow of Mercury retrograde May 13th. You know, as we showed on the chart that I put up earlier, Mercury retrogrades, they can happen up to 3 to 4 times a year. So we experience those things, you know, when we realize that it's like, oh, it's not like something that just hits us out of nowhere. You know, as we get older in life, it's like, how many of these have you been through? It's not a big deal, right? But we can use the difference of the energy and be aware of that, right? because Mercury rules communication, which includes devices, writing, any way of communicating, really, and transportation, movement, mobility, the working of the physical body, vehicles, biking, driving, walking, and really any process of being in motion. When we go into retrograde, the outer communication and physical travel can become staticky and slowing challenges, a bit challenging as we're nudged to turn our focus to inner communication and inner traveling within ourselves. There can be confusion in communication, there can be accidents, hurting feet and legs, things keeping you off the road. Just try to have money set aside for things during the retrograde if you're going to do anything like that. When we're in the pre-shadow and actually in the retrograde for Mercury, things aren't quite the way that we think that we're seeing them as. So we don't have all the information regarding whatever's going on, so we don't want to move forward on new things, new communication, new agreements, new transportation. We have this, Mercury is keeping us from having all the information come clearly to us from the outside world. So let's clarify all that with some do's and don'ts, which are totally up to you. We never tell you what to do. But there are things to be aware of, but also use your intuition, of course. So do not force things. Go with the flow. Don't make rigid plans. Be flexible. Don't be terrified and do nothing. Redirect the energy and use the energy. We'll talk about that in a moment here, how you can use that energy. Do not launch new things unless it's something that is intended to only last 6 to 9 months. But you still have challenges with the launch, etc. It may not be as successful, or it might even be canceled. Do not sign contracts or make life-altering decisions, if at all possible. Do not make any unnecessary purchases. But if you must make a purchase, like, your phone died or your computer died, and you're like, well, I can't wait till after the retrograde, just make sure you keep your receipts, all the paperwork, all the boxes, be crystal clear on return policies and dates that you have to return certain things by. If you can get insurance or that additional protection on extended warranties or whatever, extra support, do it. If you're looking at purchasing a car, avoid buying from an individual, as there's no way to hold the individual accountable usually. So pay for an inspection to make sure there's nothing wrong with it. Avoid the lemon. Buy from a certified dealership if possible. Again, any extended warranties, consider extra insurance on the vehicle, 0 deductible for glass coverage or lower deductibles, and expect that things will come up, and do what you can to keep them limited and not a big deal. And with the relationships, try not to initiate new relationships with people that you have not known in the past, unless there's a combination in your birth chart that supersede the retrograde, if there's something so extreme. But if you've known someone already, then hey, you can move forward on that. So let's go on to the do's. So do edit things. If you put pretty much before any word, you can do that. Reorganize, reassess, but it's all about reflection, right? This energy definitely supports the review of things. So reconsider, reassess, rest, rediscuss, renegotiate, refinance, but do not sign the contract. It's basically earthworm energy. You go back over the same ground to make the ground more fertile for the future planting season. Go back over old projects or finish old projects. Breathe life into old ideas. Dust off old ideas and look at them again. It's also good energy to do comparison shopping, because you can really investigate, really dive into things, right? Clean things out, deal with clutter, go through old files, things that have emotional charge around them. Put it in piles and come back to it after you go direct. It's a good time to learn and to teach too, especially if it's something that you've taught before. Just make sure there's no kind of refund policy. If you're teaching or offering something, then that they can look at later. And then travel, especially, you can travel, especially if you're going to go back to some place you've lived before or visited before. Just be open and flexible with delays, even if you're planning for some date outside of the retrograde, because it's still the same energy charge of the retrograde. No cancel fees or fees to change the dates. Make sure there's none of that. Again, flexibility, chances of luggage being lost can be increased too. So take the carry-on if possible. Gates changing at the last second to a gate far away can happen. Itineraries can change. If you're taking a road trip, make sure the vehicle's in tip-top shape and maintenance done on it. And make sure you have your roadside assistance, gear in the car, and like your insurance card accessible, all that stuff. Just be prepared going, this could be a challenging trip more than normal. We're going to prepare for it and be open for it, right? And the Mercury retrograde can also bring up old patterns and old challenges to review during this period, especially around communication. Things that were brushed under the rug. The rug gets pulled up for us so that we can take a look at it and, oh my God. So I mentioned Mercury is in Aries. So let's take a look at the Mercury's in Aries energy. It tends to invite us to celebrate our most authentic self. It encourages us to be our unapologetic selves. How do we discover this? Not from the outside world, right? Out there, it's retail price and opinion. We end up on the clearance rack out there. We find our true authentic self by turning inward and upward, connecting with our higher self and our spirit support team there. It's there that we remember our true self is a powerful, supernatural, eternal spirit being made of unconditional love. There we remember that we're priceless. So that's the energy of Mercury for now. So let's move on to the Saturn retrograde. So Saturn went into its pre-shadow, like I mentioned, on March 24th of this year. And it's going to be going into its retrograde on June 29th in Pisces. And then it'll go direct again on November 15th. So yeah, we're going to be in that for a little bit. And then the post-shadow, that'll last until February 18th of 2025. So this energy is going to be with us for a while. And as I mentioned before, Saturn retrogrades, it can happen at least once per year. So it is something that we experience every year. When Saturn is direct, the energy of Saturn focuses on how we parent ourselves and the area of work and career. The Saturn retrograde kind of acts as a mini Saturn return, turning us inward like most retrogrades for reflection. And a Saturn return is when the planet Saturn is back at the zodiac sign and degree it was when we were born. Happens every 28 to 29 Earth years. That's how long it takes to go around the sun. But it can impact us up to 5 years before and after because of how far it is out in the orbit from the sun. And a Saturn return, is that time when our shadow shakes our cage of belief that we've created growing up, the materials provided by parents and guardians and teachers and preachers and society and movies and books and all that. We're challenged to review all that we've been taught, which we call the small t truths rooted in fear. And Saturn is the taskmaster, but they also bring us reward for doing all this inner work. And all of this helps us with the evolution of our personality, this character that we're playing here, the small t truths being transformed into higher truths, capital T truths, rooted in unconditional love, brings us knowledge and wisdom through our intentional questioning of those past beliefs. And we can experience challenges during these retrogrades around structure, parenting, and parental relationships. It's interesting that Saturn is also known as the Lord of Karma and past lives. So it brings knowledge, wisdom, emotions, and energy that we stored from past lifetimes with the ability to access them in other lifetimes. So during the retrograde of Saturn, it can be like receiving a special library card with deeper access to the restricted section into the Akashic Hall of Records. That's where all our past life information is stored. So be prepared to feel things differently, sense emotions and connections with others that you were not aware of before. And you might even like dream of other lifetimes, like sleeping dreams. Or maybe, I don't know, maybe you can have daydreams. I mean, we don't limit spirit, right? In the Saturn retrograde, it is a time of review, and it can also expect some delays that are happening for you in order to give you appropriate time to review before making important decisions in your life. It's a great time to question your way of working. Are you living or just existing? Are you working or taking step towards your dream career, your dharma, your life purpose? Are you living to work, or are you working to live your dream? And it is a time to question your way of living. Why are you choosing what you are? And it's a time to question how we picture our social relationships, right? Who stays? Who goes? So to make this time of deep reflection move more smoothly, put reminders around you to have fun and laugh and experience joy, unconditional love, and have a focus on gratitude. This will expand the energy of the higher vibration while you reflect on lower vibrational experiences and beliefs. As I mentioned, Saturn is going into Pisces retrograde. So Saturn in Pisces energy, it does ground us spiritually, and it can bring our fantasies or dreams into the reality. And during a Saturn retrograde in Pisces, we can have an opportunity to rebuild our understanding of the meaning of life and what our life purpose is and our place that we have in this world for this lifetime. It can draw you into kind of a bit of a hermit or high priestess mode where we feel an urge to be alone, to contemplate and connect with spirit. So it's definitely a time of inner reflection. All right, well, that's it for now. Let me know if you have any questions on any of this information by commenting on the video down below, or feel free to send an email to me at bruttazen@gmail.com. And if you have any additional knowledge that you would like to share regarding retrogrades, Mercury, or Saturn retrogrades, feel free to comment down below as well. Well, we all can learn from each other, for sure. So I hope this helps. Until next time, please remember every second of every day that you are unconditionally and eternally loved by the Mother and the Father of all things, our Creator. And of course, I love you too. So hang in there. Take care of you. We'll see you soon.